Welcome to Schloss Leopoldskron and the Salzburg Global Seminar. My guest is Jonathan Benthall. You are an anthropologist. You are also an author. You've written publications on Islamic charities. And you have been taking part in discussions here in Salzburg on the laws of war. In fact, you presented a paper on delivering safe aid. I'd like to know how you got from anthropology to Islamic charities to humanitarian aid.
Well, it's very much applied anthropology, but as well as being director of the Royal Anthropological Institute in London for many years, I was on several committees of Save the Children, one of our big aid agencies, and I got to know the aid agency world quite well, and then from that I got on to looking at Islamic charities well before it became a hot subject. But after 9/11, the whole question of Islamic charities has become very politically controversial.
Yes.
And so that there's quite a lot more interest in this subject, which when I started it in 1993 was very obscure.
And this discussion, the laws of war, you were particularly looking at humanitarian aid?
Yes, humanitarian aid, and in particular the problem of the designation or blacklisting of charities that are regarded as being sponsors of terrorism, which has been the result of a kind of overreaction, in my opinion, in the United States since 9/11, and has made life very difficult for bona fide Islamic charities. And I've been involved with a Swiss government-funded project to help the good Islamic charities demonstrate that they're willing to comply with international norms of accountability and transparency, and so become acceptable to the international community.
This is not your first visit to Schloss Leopoldskron, is it?
No, I came here in 1971, a seminar on the arts and social change, which lasted for 3 weeks. It was rather Spartan, the accommodation, compared with the luxurious rooms now. We lived in dorms, separated by sort of cubicles. But one rather exciting thing we did was to try to excavate the Max Reinhardt Theatre on the lake. And I assumed that this would remain and that it would become restored, but in fact I believe it's been allowed to sink back into the grass. There's not very much left of it.
No,
but it was enormous, I believe, when it was.
Yes.
If you look at the photos.
That's absolutely sad, isn't it? It's not still there. Well, as you say, it's very palatial now. I mean, it is a palace,
really
but it's not dormitories anymore. But
very comfortable.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but you're shortly going to be abandoned on the Untersberg, which, if you look across the lake from the Schloss, is that tall rugged mountain.
Yes.
But you will be able to take with you 3 works of art, literature, music, entertainment, which relate to the rule of law in some way.
Well, I've thought of 3 works that might qualify for this to keep me a bit warmer up there.
What shall we start with?
Well, the first would be Handel's Messiah, a wonderful moment in this oratorio, a quotation from the Psalms. Why do the nations so furiously rage together, and why do the people imagine a vain thing? Which he set to music with this wonderfully turbulent, angry music.
It's very apt.
Yes.
And very modern somehow.
Yes, it is. It really gives one a shiver when one hears it, I think.
Yes. And your second, George?
The second would be the film The Battle of Algiers, which was set in 1956 or around then during the Algerian War, and was made in 1964 by the Italian director Pontecorvo in a at that time very revolutionary kind of quasi-documentary style, although none of it was actually newsreel or documentary footage, but he got hundreds of Algerian extras to act, and in fact there was only one actor who was a Frenchman who was a professional actor, and he gives an extraordinary picture of urban guerrilla warfare. And it was actually referred to by one of the participants in this seminar on the Geneva Conventions, because there's a moment when Colonel Mathieu, who's the French army commander in charge of the operations, when he says that you've got to think about these insurgents as networks, and he draws a picture on on the blackboard of networks of three people, little cells. And this is in fact exactly what the civilized world is facing today with Al-Qaeda on a bigger scale.
Yes, the nature of warfare has changed a lot, hasn't it? With civilian targets and the old soldier against soldier.
That was one of the themes of our discussions of the last few days.
And what is your final choice?
The final choice would be that wonderful painting in the Prado, the 3rd of May 1808 by Goya, which was of the execution of Spanish insurgents after Napoleon's victory. And it's an amazing picture. It's extremely big. When you come into the room in the Prado, it really sort of knocks you out, because it's all illuminated by a lantern on the ground, and there are these soldiers in a sort of mass aiming at a procession, a sort of untidy procession of these condemned men. And one man is holding out his arms. It's not quite clear whether it's an appeal or bravado, and then followed by others showing every range of emotion that you'd expect people to be showing in these circumstances. But it's an immensely powerful painting, and I think it solves very, very well the problem of conveying other people's suffering artistically, because it's so easy for people to do this in a sort of lurid, self-indulgent way. But Goya seems to really bring it off, and I think for that and other reasons he's my favourite of all painters.
Well, this is going to be a very difficult choice, but in the event of a blizzard, you will probably find a little cave on the Untersberg to take shelter, but you will only be able to have one of your three works. Which would you keep?
Well, I certainly think the last two would be too depressing. If I could have the whole of the Messiah, I would like to have this on a gramophone or similar.
I think we'll let you have the whole of the Messiah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Jonathan, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you, I've enjoyed it.